Did you know that the Gardener's Workshop offers online courses? Whether you're a gardener or a flower farmer, we cover it all, allowing you to increase your skills at your own pace. So check out our full list of courses today at thegardenersworkshop.com. The Gardener's Workshop, turning all thumbs green.
Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Field and Garden Podcast. It is your friend in flowers, Lisa Mason Ziegler, and thanks for dropping in. I know you have a lot of choices, and I am always grateful when you guys decide to take a listen. And friends, we have another great podcast today. I have my friend Ellen Frost of Local Color Flowers of Baltimore, Maryland here with me today. Hey, Ellen.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here.
So Ellen and I are going to talk about a really hot topic today, y'all. But before we jump, I just want to remind everybody that this podcast is brought to you by thegardenersworkshop.com, where you will find it home base to everything, whether it's my membership, our online garden shop, our online courses, and a boatload of free resources, friends. So you are always invited. The door is always open for you to jump over there and learn more about everything that we're doing to promote growing your own cut flowers, whether you're a home gardener or a business or a budding, aspiring business owner, we've got you covered. So Ellen, today I want to talk about something that I know I get frequent questions about, and I'm pretty certain that you do too. It's why I don't use floral recipes. And that, for anybody, first off, define what that is for the person that's out there that might not understand what that means.
Sure. So in the floral design world, a flower recipe is basically taking every design that you are going to make and creating a formula. So if you are going to make a bridal bouquet, you are going to make a recipe. It's going to have 5 roses, 5 gerbers, 5 hydrangea, 3 eucalyptus, and I've got 10 of these to make, and I'm going to make everyone exactly the same with this recipe. And then from those recipes that I make months in advance of the event, I can take that and I can order from a wholesaler exactly what I want. So if I want, 500 peach roses, I can just order those. I know exactly what I'm getting. And so when it comes time to make the design, you have your recipe, you've made your order, you use what you ordered. It's exactly as you pictured it. And it's exactly how it was 6 months ago or a year ago or today, because the flowers are just being shipped in commercially or conventionally. And you can get, it's a world where you can get whatever you want, whenever you want it.
Until you can't.
Until you can't. Exactly.
So, I think that really builds people, pushes them up against the wall, because that works great if that's the customer that you have and that's you want to do the same thing day in and day out. But until the day you can't get that. I can still remember imagining the hair raising that was going on, when COVID happened and, we couldn't get flowers and that whole industry just kind of shut down. All of a sudden, the recipe florist had to, they started reaching out to flower farmers. That flower farmer that had been calling on them for 3 years that they didn't have the time of day for, all of a sudden was pretty special. But in their face, I can't imagine the anxiety of all of that happening. So as a florist, and I didn't give you an opportunity, Ellen, for those people that may not be familiar, tell us what your business is and why we would be talking about this.
Sure. So my name's Ellen Frost. I own a business called Local Color Flowers, and we're a floral design studio that sources all of our flowers locally. So we use flowers from farms within 100 miles of our space in Baltimore. And we do all the things that florists do with flowers, but we use local flower sports. So weddings, events, corporate, retail, subscriptions, classes. We do all those things, but with local flowers. And so the reason that this is an issue is because in the world of floristry, the bigger world of floristry, recipes are the standard. And how you are taught as you come up through the floral design world is that if you don't have a recipe, it's a disaster.
Yeah.
Either because you can't control your prices, you can't control your designs, you can't ensure that you have that exact replica that you made for a mock-up 6 months ago. If you're not using a recipe, it's, a disaster. That's what we're sort of taught as we're coming up through the floral design world. So I will tell you, just, thinking about when I started, and that was how I learned, I read books, I read magazines, I talked to people, and everything you were taught was like, have these recipes. And I remember early on, trying that. I tried to have a recipe, like in our first year when we did weddings, I was like, okay, let me make the recipe. I booked the wedding. It's in 6 months in October. Let me make the recipe. So, I call Dave Dowling, my friend Dave, one of my earliest growers, and said, okay, I booked a wedding. It's April, and the wedding is in October, on October 20th. Can you tell me what's going to be available on October 20th?
How hard did he laugh?
You could not even, the laughter was beyond. Like, he was just like, obviously, I have no idea. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm like, well, you have some idea. He's like, no, I really don't have any idea. And I just I couldn't reconcile the things that people were telling me, like, you will fail if you don't have a recipe. And the growers saying, you can't do it that way.
Right.
Because
I'll
we
have
can't.
something. I'll have
something, but I don't know. I don't know. I can't tell you if it's going to be this dahlia, this zinnia, this mum. I can't say, because it all depends on the weather and everything. And in those early years, the anxiety that caused me, because I was just clutching to that recipe idea. And I remember even Dave, like up until 2 weeks before, I was like, I need to know the exact number of, Cornell red dahlias that you can give me in 2 weeks. And he was like, no, I will have some, but I don't know how many. I can't tell you. And so even waiting until 2 weeks before, I couldn't get a handle on a recipe. And, after a year of trying that, I was like, okay, the recipes do not work for us. Like in the local flower world,
right?
All of the advice that I'm hearing is not appropriate for the local flower situation.
But is that not the door that opens to the magic
of
gorgeousness? I mean, I want to just say, when people are scrolling through Instagram, perhaps, those arrangements that just stop you, oftentimes they're Jenny Loves. Jenny has such an amazing style. Why does she have such that style? Because they're local flowers. She has such a different selection, and your flowers. And you know what I mean? It's like, we just have to step back and trust the process. Something I'm really trying to help my students with is, it's not that you have to do exactly what the people that have gone before you have done.
Yes.
Because even if you wanted to do it exactly like them, you could never achieve it. But they have done it, and they've done it successfully. Why do you need to reinvent the wheel? And then a big part of it is you have to trust the process.
Yes.
You have to trust that I did it, and Dave did it, and all these other people are doing it and done it.
Yes.
Been there, done that.
And for me, what I needed to do, what I figured out, is that I needed to build the relationship with the farmers so that I knew no matter what, there would be flowers.
Right.
So I might not know if it's a Cornell red or an Irene red or, another red. I know that there's going to be red flowers because I have 10 growers that I have good relationships with, and they all grow dahlias, and some of them will be red.
Yeah.
So I had to trust the relationships that I was building. And until I had those, without those, that's what made me nervous. because without knowing, oh, I know this farmer, I know their stuff, I know they're reliable, I know, once I had those, then I could sort of step back and say, okay, it'll be a week in advance and I'll order and I'll see what they have.
Right.
And then I will, because I'm a good designer and I'm creative, I will take that and I will make something beautiful with it. And I don't need the recipe. I don't need to have the recipe in order to do my job.
And, a little side note, because it's not really about recipes, but your customers have never, ever been under the impression that they were going to get a recipe. They've never been promised. They've been promised a beautiful bunch of flowers that they're going to know what they are when you hand it.
When I deliver it.
And people
and that
love
is
that. I mean,
yes.
People love that. I mean, I would love that. Love, love, love.
Yes. And that is the communicating, the sort of managing expectations part of my job. As a florist, I'm telling a customer, there is no recipe. You're not picking a design out of a book. It's not choose A or B or C, and then in 6 months you'll get A or B or C. This is saying, tell me about your event. Tell me about your life. Tell me about what you want this event to feel like. Tell me colors you like. Tell me if there's flowers you like. I am going to take everything you tell me, and then I'm going to take those flowers that those local growers have, and I'm going to create something that you're going to love and you've never seen before. And nobody has ever seen before, because everything we make is one of a kind. And
isn't that the story everybody wants?
One of a kind, and rooted in time and rooted in place. So rooted in this date, in this region, with these flowers.
So let's just say that there's a favorite flower or a variety is suddenly not available. How do you adapt your design on that? And I mean, I think that's rooted in what we just said, that nobody has expectations, but you have so many choices in other flowers and all kinds of stuff.
So one of those situations that comes up a lot is like during peony season, right? So everybody loves peonies. I always tell people, if there's a flower you love, tell me. If it's available, I'll use it. That's not a promise. That's not, but during spring, everybody loves peonies. So if they're available, great. If they're not, because sometimes they're not, it could be early, it could be late, there could be weird weather. We are looking at, okay, this person said they loved coral charm peonies. So we don't have those. Can I replace it with something? Well, obviously there's no exact comparison to coral charm peonies and something else, but can I cluster coral ranunculus together? Can I reflex coral tulips? Can I use, I'm trying to think of other corals that time of year. Can I cluster coral freesia together? Now, of course, they're not coral peonies. However, for the overall look and feel that we are going for, that works. And so just having a knowledge of flowers that we have, having a knowledge of local flowers and being able to say to having a relationship with a farmer and being able to say, hey, I'm looking for coral charms. I know they're not available, but here's some things that I thought we could look for instead. Do you have coral, ranunculus? Do you have coral tulips? And they may say, oh, well, I have tons of coral sweet William. Would that work? Yes, that will work. So, we are working with a color palette and a style and a look, and we're not promising any one flower. So we're not like a conventional florist who, when that coral charm is not there, they're in meltdown mode because they promised coral charm. The client was promised, they saw a picture of it, they are holding on to it. And then when the florist has to then say, oh, there's no coral charm.
That happens every day.
Every day.
Every stinking day. And I want to let's just take this down a notch to the flower farmers that are making mixed bouquets, whether it's CSA, farmers market, whatever you have it. Every time I post an image of a beautiful bouquet that's been made, I always get asked, whether it's my students or the public, what was the recipe for that? And I go through my whole thing. We don't use recipes. Literally, the recipe that Susanna, the bouquet makers, used was they used the flowers that were brought in from the field. People don't want to believe that, but that is the honest to goodness.
Absolutely. That's what we do. We use what is on the grower's availability list. That's what we use. And whatever they say there is available, that's what we use.
And what really helped me with that I just thought about this with you saying that, one of our biggest customers for years, for 15 years, was Colonial Williamsburg. And people don't know that they don't sell arrangements. They make arrangements for when the queen comes. That stuff is going on every day. The volume of flowers that they bought was unprecedented and unbelievable. But, and this is Clark Tagger, who, bless his heart, he passed away 2 years ago. He was the buyer. He was the main man at Colonial Williamsburg Floral Studio. And when I first started selling to him, that was back pre-economic downturn, 2003, 4, and 5. I'm telling you, he'd buy the whole truck of flowers if I'd have brought them to him. I had to save flowers for our other customers, honestly. Anyway, I can remember that he really trained me. He taught me, he's like, he would call me on a Monday right before I'd be sending the availability out. And he said, Lisa, I know you can't tell me exactly what you're going to have yet because y'all are cutting, but just give me a peek at what you think you might have, because I'm going to build. Garden and Gun magazine is doing a big shoot here this weekend, and they're asking me what flowers they're going to have. And so that's what I'm asking you. What flowers am I going to have, Lisa? And then he would fill in, if he needed to, from a conventional method. And it changed his job. Colonial Williamsburg, going from just having conventional opportunities to be able to buy local and on volume. Because I sold a lot of flowers to them for a lot of years, but that's what they did. And it's like, I just started thinking, doesn't everybody do it that way?
Right.
They don't.
They don't. And I will say, when we are talking about like farmers selling to florists, for me, because I don't use a recipe, I'm flexible on what I use. One thing I think that farmers sometimes may come up against is trying to sell or work with a florist who works at a retail shop that is involved in the wire service, because that is the one place where there is really very little flexibility on the recipe. Because if you are working in a shop that does Teleflora or 1-800-Flowers or any of these wire services, corporately, they are given a recipe. You have to use 3 liatris, 3 lilies, 3 sunflowers. And those florists do not have the flexibility to work outside of that. So that may be a more difficult sell unless you can say, tell me your recipe. Oh, 3 liatris. So you need 100 liatris this week. Maybe I can grow liatris next year because that's part of your recipe. But that is the one place that I find that there is really very little flexibility on the recipe.
And Ellen, that goes back to really scoping out who your customer is as a flower farmer. And so like that first person that I stalked, the very first one, they didn't do any of that. They really catered to the upscale people here in our town. It was just the world aligned for me to find them to follow that way. But I have learned in my efforts to order flowers for family that's out of town to kind of figure out, you go to their website. And if it's full of the same arrangements that you're seeing on other websites, that they fall under that category.
Yes.
But if you go to a website that has pictures of their shop and they don't really have pick which arrangement you want.
Yes.
That's when you call up and say, hey, do you buy local? And if they say yes, say, okay.
Yeah.
I want to order flowers.
That's a great fit.
But that's the person, how you the flower farmers find florists that have the potential, whether they know it or not yet,
Yes.
to be flexible. And
Yes.
it is a scary road, just like the flower farmers I find are really scary. I mean, they want to know how many plants to plant, to know how many stems to get, to be able to make X number of bouquets. And I mean, I just know it's not a good answer. But
Yeah.
Dave Dowling and I are both like, we just planted every square inch that we had with the diverse offering of flowers.
And then made as many bouquets as we could.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. And it is so hard. And I understand that we often have the saying that, you know, when you're making bouquets and you're down to, you have to make 250 mixed bouquets, right? And you barely have enough flowers and you're getting down to the last 25 that you're laying out to make. And Suzanne, my sister, who was our head bouquet person, would say to me, these are going to be the ugliest bouquets we have ever made. Friends, what are the first bouquets to sell? That bunch.
Always.
What we think is
always
not what people think.
Yes, always. I cannot tell you how many times that's happened. It happened to me last week with Valentine's Day because we made all of our stuff and then we had a ton of bright, like neon yellow tulips. And I was like, all right, we're just going to make the bouquets with the yellow tulips. And when I gave people the option, everybody chose the bouquets with the yellow tulips because, you know, what we think is not going to, you know, be marketable or pleasurable is usually not.
And so I think we've already touched on how you manage the expectations around the final product of what you actually sell. But, you know, tell us a little bit, because I know that this is a big part of your growing your business through local sourcing school. But how do you educate your clients? It's like you're painting a picture, right? I mean, you're telling a story.
Yeah. Education is a big piece of what we do. And so I always start by explaining. I want to hear from you, you know, what you like, what your colors are, all of the things you can tell me. But I'm going to tell you right now, you know, we can't promise a certain type of flower. We can't promise a certain color. So we are not matching your dress or your shoes to a certain flower. If you like orange, I'm going to tell you we're on a spectrum of orange. That might be peach. That might be red orange. You're going to get a spectrum of orange. We cannot promise some, you know, very specific shade. And so when we start to say that, sometimes I can see people like, oh no, like, I don't know what that means. Like, what am I going to get? And I always say, like, if you want a red and white bouquet, I'm not going to show up with pink and orange. Like, you're going to get a red and white bouquet that is beautiful. I just can't say if it's this flower or that flower. But what I can say is, you know, and for farmers too, you know, how can we ease people's nervousness about that, right? We can show them pictures like we do. Okay, in years past, here's what we've had in the month of your event. In years past, here's designs we've made in the month of your event. You know, here's some things we've made in May. You can see how beautiful, how lush, how gorgeous, how in every color they are, you know. So any ways that we can help ease the sort of nervousness, but more and more we're finding that people are embracing that and just saying, of course, you're the professional. You're the florist, you're the expert. You are going to create something beautiful for me. So go for it.
You know, Ellen, I think you do such a great job. And this is a lesson to florists and to farmers of just including your community in so many ways. I know that you guys do workshops, you do events. I mean, I still just absolutely adore the thought of the bloom battle, about how people, it's like, tell us about what that is.
Sure. Bloom Battle, we've been doing it for 10 years. It's an amateur floral design competition where 16 people come on a Friday night. They have no idea what flowers we're going to have. They bring their own vase and they have 2 hours to create the best arrangement they can make with the flowers that we have. So basically throwing them into the no recipe design.
Exactly.
and letting them go crazy. Make the best thing that you can make. And then the next day, those arrangements are on display for our community. We have community voting for the People's Choice Award. Then we have celebrity voting, where there's, first, second, and third prize, best use of color, things like that. But it allows people to feel what that feels like. Like, what does it feel like to just have local flowers available and create something totally without a recipe?
So what I'm trying to paint here is part of the security, the peace, like I like to call it. I want to have some business peace,
Yes.
It's like, to me, that means doing things in the way it's recommended, to have backup plans, backup money,
Yes.
the whole 9 yards, right? Creates a peaceful feeling.
Yes.
By you doing all of these things and sharing them with the community, it just helps you to embrace, and your community to embrace, what it is you're doing. And it just builds your confidence so
Totally.
very, very much. And I just think we are so hard on ourselves, so very, very difficult. And I think that, the opportunity to not use recipes is the magic of the future. And
Yes.
we just have to take the leap. We just have to.
And I think that we also underestimate, a lot of times I hear florists say, I could never do what you do. My customers would never go for them.
Right. Surprise.
They would. They absolutely would. We underestimate what consumers and other florists want and need. I think when we lay out the story of local flowers, most people are like, yeah, that sounds awesome. Of course I want to do that. And for those that don't, great. There's a million other options for you. But if we don't even give people the opportunity to choose that, I think we're really doing a disservice to our community. I think those people that say my customers will never go for that have never tried to get their customers to go for that.
And also, I have to say that many florists have never truly had access to quality, professionally grown cut flowers. I know that I had to overcome when I first started selling, and I started peddling up in Williamsburg, right? And so there was definitely, that's a party town, right? Columbia, Williamsburg, and everything related to that. And there had been kind of a an old guy that was a vegetable grower that would grow some flowers, and
there's always one.
Put them in the back of his pickup truck and wind beat them and bring them to the florist, and could go in and knock on the door and say, hey, come out here, I got some flowers to sell. I had to really overcome that.
Yes.
That's probably why I'm kind of a little crazy about quality,
I think a lot of florists have had that situation where they are gun shy to say yes to local again, because they either had something that conked out on them, that wasn't high quality, that didn't last, absolutely. And one of the things that Dave Dowling taught me, almost 20 years ago, one thing he said was, when you bring a sample to a florist, if you're a farmer trying to sell to a florist, don't just drop those flowers off. Tell the florist that these are for them to design with and to keep for themselves, so that the florist can really experience the quality of those flowers. Because honestly, people bring samples to us all the time. And if we're busy, I might be like, just put them in the centerpieces and go along our way. I don't look at them. I don't think about them. But if a farmer says, these are for you, make something for yourself, put it on your table, see how long it lasts, come back and let me know how it went. Right. That is when a florist, you can kind of overcome that gun shyness by saying, look at these yourself, keep these yourself, and see how great they are.
So I think that what we're hoping is communicated here is that really to be a creative, to be that all flowers are beautiful. And my sister has a huge theory that every color goes together. They grow in nature, right? Obviously there's some that mend together better, but we just have to kind of let go of that whole recipe as part of the local flower thing, because there's just too many opportunities. You're putting blinders on by doing that, right? So Ellen, thank you so much for sharing. And I think that I'll say it again, that your school course really is a great opportunity for not only for flower farmers who need to know, I mean, you always need to know as much as possible about your customer, I believe.
Yes.
But it really helps to calm some of these confidence issues and build you up. And recipes can be one of those things, and especially,
yes, absolutely.
it builds your confidence to help you approach florists, to have more history, to have more confidence. And again, I just really thank you for joining me and sharing all of your wisdom. And I mean, we are getting a little smarter the more we've done that. I mean, volume has definitely got something to do with success, don't you think?
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I hope people listening will, dip their toe in and give it a try. If you are a farmer who does bouquets, normally with a recipe, or you're feeling stressed about a recipe, try a week without it and see how it goes. See what creative juices happen as a result of not, forcing yourself into that recipe.
Right. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to make bouquets fast. We make speed bouquets
of
with
course.
no recipe. In fact, it's probably quicker.
Yeah, because you're not thinking about, did I put 3 of those? Did I put 2 of those? Did I?
Right, right. And you will soon learn that your customers absolutely adore it.
Yes.
Right. All right, friends, I'm going to let Ellen go. And thanks for joining us here today on the Field and Garden Podcast. And remember, you're invited. Door is always open at thegardenersworkshop.com. Ciao.